Let's have a look at a few announcements that were made. Okay, so yesterday, Mr. Deodat, your module coordinator, made an announcement regarding supplementary. But I think the most important thing is that your test 3, the date has been changed. Right. So it's no longer on Friday, next week, Friday. It's not on Friday next week. It's going to be next week, Wednesday. Now, you can't afford to make a mistake and think it's on Friday. You just can't, because he's saying that there will be no AgroTAT for those who miss test 3 for any reason. So you have to write that test. Okay. And he's also saying here that if you get a final mark between 40 to 49, hopefully you won't get that. You're going to get above 49, you'll get 50 or above. But if you do get between 40 and 49, you will be able to write a supplementary. The supplementary will be held on Monday, the 29th of November for all qualifying students. That is those that achieve a final mark in the range of 40 to 49%. All qualifying students will be notified via email no later than Saturday, 27th of November. The supplementary is not open to all. Okay, so please be aware of this. Another announcement, concept tests 5 to 10 have been reopened. Okay, they reopened today at 7:45 and they're going to close on Monday, 22nd November 2021. So those students who didn't get a chance to do those tests, they didn't attempt them, they will be able to go now and attempt those concept tests. Right, so they'll close on Monday next week. So if you haven't done any of the concept tests 5 to 10, please go and do those. Okay, we are going to have a look at test 2, which was written on the 29th of October 2021. Make sure you read your information, that your instructions to the candidates, and know your closing time. If your closing time is 22:30, don't go and write the test at 9:30, thinking that you're going to have a few extra hours of studying. It's not worth it. You can only have a problem. Write it closer to this time, the 14:30 p.m. Get it over and done with. If you have any issues, you can sort those out. Fine. If it comes late and you started at 9 o'clock, 9:30, and you have a problem, you only have yourself to blame. Okay, first question. Monera Limited is a tech company that offers customers access to a private online podcast library. What does this mean? Online, they have podcasts which are basically people that sit down and have discussions about a given topic, and they record the audio or sometimes even a video, and people can listen to them for whatever reason. So they have these podcasts. They have them in a private library that obviously you need to be granted entrance to. So it sells this entrance. You get 6 months access to it for 3 grand. for a fee of 3,000. Explain how Monera Limited should measure the progress relating to the performance obligation. So whenever you get to discussion questions, the first thing that you need to think about is, what is the issue? Now here they've kind of already given the issue is that you want to know how to measure the progress relating to the performance obligation. What are they talking about? This 3,000 Rand, as the 6 months goes by, how are we going to record this as revenue? Because what is the performance obligation, right? So we need to come to that. And also the first thing you need to think about also is your theory. What theory do I need to apply? Now I know I am selling things, it's got to do with the revenue. So I got to start thinking of my revenue theory and measuring progress relating to the proof. So which step? We're talking about step 5. Recognize revenue when the entity satisfies a performance obligation. So what obligation, what was our performance obligation? What is the company's performance obligation? The performance obligation is that Monera has to provide access to the library for a period of 6 months. So as long as we give the customer access to the library, whether he uses it or not, we have done our performance obligation, but each month. Now, what theory is the under this step? It says here, it shall recognize when it satisfies a performance obligation, right? Over time or at a point in time. So this example, what is it? Is it at one point in time or over time? It's obviously over time. As the 6 months goes by, we slowly are satisfying the performance obligation. And the main criteria, our theory tells us, the objective, sorry, here's it here. All right. So here it says, for each performance obligation satisfied over time, the entity shall recognize revenue over time, and the objective is to depict the performance in transferring control of the goods and services to a customer. And also, we're going to apply a certain method. So what is the most appropriate method in our example? Each month, we are giving them access. So the entity's efforts are the same throughout the year. Access simply has to be granted. Therefore, the best measure would be a straight line or an input method, because all we have to do is put in an input, which is allow access, and that's our performance obligation. Okay, so if we're going to use that method, don't forget that you must look in the question for your detail. There's a reason why they gave you this figure. 3,000 for 6 months. So each month, if you're using the input straight line input method, performance obligation satisfied over time, 3,000 divided by 6 is going to be Monero is going to recognize the revenue at 500 Rand per month. So of these 6 months, each time a month goes by, they're going to credit revenue with 500 because a month has gone by, they've satisfied the performance obligation. We are measuring it on a straight line input method. So we're going to say 500 each month. Okay, and why? Because it's satisfied over time, because the customer will receive and consume the benefits as Monero performs the obligation of providing access. Look at your notes. You've got an example here. iBooks, access to private library, sells anytime access, and a solution with a calculation. It's if you had done this example in your notes, you would have been more than prepared for this question in your test. So if you didn't get full marks for this question, it means you never studied. Every single student should have got full marks for this because you were given an almost identical example in your notes. So students are rewarded for going over their notes, going over their tuts. If you don't study, you only have yourself to blame. And if you didn't get full marks for this question, it's because you never study. Well, I don't know what you were studying. Maybe you were studying, I don't know what you were studying. Definitely this question was an easy 4 marks. Any questions? All right. Next question. Ethereum Limited, a real estate dealer, enters into a contract with a customer to sell a plot of land for 10 million. The customer intends to grow gooseberries on the land for export. The competition for gooseberry farming is low, and the customer has extensive experience about the industry. The customer pays a 2 million Rand deposit and takes a loan from Ethereum Limited for the balance, which will be repaid monthly using the proceeds from the export of the gooseberries. The customer owns many other significant assets with a net asset value that exceeds 50 million. Required, again, very important, in accordance with IFRS 15, revenue from contracts with customers. This should say with. Determine whether the 5 criteria in step 1 have been met. So here they're saying IFRS 15. So you have to go to the standard and get the theory from the standard. That's why they say it accordance. If you go and now look at the conceptual framework and determine whether it's an asset or whether it's income, you're wasting your time. It's in accordance if it's 15. Right. So here's a contract. They draw up a contract. What's the contract? The real estate dealer is going to give land for 50 million and not for 50 million, for 10 million. And the customer, they're going to pay the money over. Right? So they want to know, has the criteria been met so that you have a contract? So you go straight to your theory. What theory do I need to apply? What is my set of rules? Your theory is right here. Your 5 criteria. The parties should have approved the contract. They can identify each party's rights. They can identify the payment terms. There's commercial substance, and it's probable that the entity will conduct the consideration. You put your theory down. Half a mark for stating all the theory. Right. Straight half a mark from your notes. Now, someone might say that we can't, it takes us very long to type. Your ADO told me that some students are typing like one letter at a time. Like, for example, if they want to type this out, they are saying, okay, T, then they're looking for H, and they're saying, okay, E, and then they're leaving a space. Then they're saying P, and then you can't type like that. If you are typing like that, you need help. You need to go for a course. You need to study. Or you need to go online and look for a guide. You need to go to the writing place at UKZN, type in writing place UKZN and go to them and ask them for help. You need to learn how to type fast. You can't be typing slow. You need to type at least like this. Right. You, as fast as you write, you got to be able to type. Now, if you go when you finish your studies and you go into the workplace, your boss says, "Where's the work?" You say, "No, it's taking me long to type." You can't. That's not. You have to have typing skills. Everything is done online nowadays. If I can guarantee you that if you are not going to be able to type, someone from another university, there's so much competition. If you're going to be a slow typer, you're not going to get the job, or you're going to have a hard time at the job. So that's why you're being trained at university that you have to be able to type fast. Or if you're going to be a lazy man like me, very simple. You just go to your notes, select this, control, I'm pressing control, and I'm pressing C. I've copied it. I go to my attempt, I say control V. And it's done. I don't need to type. Or I can do the old man's method where I'm gonna select, then I can right click, say copy, right click, paste. But you still have to be able to type fast because certain things you won't be able to copy and paste. Okay, so half a mark for all of this. Now that you've put down the theory, can you see most of the marks is for applying the theory? Okay, so the parties have approved the contract. Yes, they have discussed the contract. They he's going to give over the land, and the customer is going to intend to pay. Is already going to pay a deposit. So they've entered into the contract. They can identify each party's rights. Yes, the rights are explicit. He gets a piece of land, real estate gets 10 million. Rights are explicit. The entity can identify the payment terms. The payment terms, yes, 2 million deposit, and the rest are going to be paid monthly. Payment terms are explicit. The contract has commercial substance. It's for the sale of a building. It's not like where one company is selling to itself or doing something strange. It's a normal sale of a building. It is probable that the entity will collect the consideration. Yes, the customer owns, the customer has extensive experience in this industry. Competition is low. And even if they are not able to make money with this, the customer has other assets, 50 million net asset value. He can sell off some of that to pay us off. So yes. So they're available 4.5. So they were, you could have made a mistake. Let's say you didn't say this. You'll still get the full marks because available 4.5, but max 4 marks. Okay. If you had gone over your notes, Look at this example in your notes. Example 1, a real estate developer selling a building. Customer has little experience, so it's a little bit different. Customer doesn't have. Here's your criteria. Here's your perfect question to prepare you for the question in the test. If you didn't get full marks for this question, you didn't study. Simple as that. You didn't study. And if you didn't get full marks, you only have yourself to blame. Okay. Can you see that it says here the collection is probable, owns many other significant assets with a net asset value of over 50 million? Right. Now, one of your questions that came as a direct message. So when they ask a question that we should not provide, what? We should also provide figures on how they relate to that question. Yes. You look at the question, they give you these figures for a reason. Right? So there's 50 million. You need to put that into your solution. You get marks for that. Always in a discussion question, the figures are important as well. Discuss the figures. There can be marks for those figures. Do a calculation in your discussion. So if it just owns many other significant assets, that's not enough. Tell me how much. You may get the mark if you get a lenient marker, but what if you get a strict marker? They won't give you this mark. So whatever information in the question, use that as a tool for your solution. But another thing, very common mistake. Students want to say 50 million, so they do this. And they expect us to believe that this is 50 million. This is not 50 million. This is 5 with 6 zeros. That's 5 million. If you write 5 million, I know you meant 50 million, but you'll still get 0. You won't get the mark because you can't put, you especially as an accountant, as a CA, as a person who people are going to rely on for accuracy. Remember I told you that example of the student who was supposed to get 1.5 million student NSFAS allowance, and they paid her 3 extra zeros. They gave her 1.4 million and she used 800,000 over like about 70 days or so. Like it came out to about 17 grand a day she was using. Right. Now, what happens if you're the accountant that authorized that payment? Right. So you can't expect me to know. I know the answer is 50 million. You have to show me that you know the answer. So we are training you now that you can't get this wrong, because if you go and let's say the customer pays you, you tell the customer asks you, I want to buy a plot of land. The land is 50 million. So you tell the customer, hey, the customer sends an email to you and you tell him, this is the amount you have to pay us for the land. And they pay you 5 million and you give them the land. What will the shareholder of the company say? Hey, he was supposed to pay us 50 million. You only charged him 5 million. You think they're just going to accept your apology? No, you will get fired because you lost them 45 million. So you need to be accurate with your zeros. Now, it may sound stupid, it may sound easy, but this mistake keeps on happening. If you miss out a zero, you don't get the mark. That's it. It's not the amount. 5 million is not the same as 50 million. So how you can do it is you can leave gaps. I know I want 50 and I want a million. So I've gone 6 zeros. That's 50 million. If I want 5 million, I got my 6 zeros, so I'm going to make it 5 million. That's 5 million. If I want 500,000, I want 1,000 and I want 500 of those thousands. If I want 50,000, I want 1,000 and I want 50 of those thousands. If I want 5,000, I want 5 and 5 of those thousands. If I want 500 million, 500 and 6 zeros. Okay, so please make sure you understand how to write your figures down correctly. I see students doing all the work and losing marks just because of typos. You can't make typos. Okay, so that is another question straight from your notes. Okay, another discussion question. DeFi Limited sells telecommunication equipment. At the end of the 2021 financial year, the company had 20 transmitters on hand at a cost price of 16,000 Rand each. I'm already in my mind, alarm bells are going off that I need to think about inventory. These transmitters are not designed with the latest technology. It was established that the transmitters could be sold for 18,000 Rand each. When I say it is not designed with the latest technology, I'm thinking they could be obsolete and I might need to do a write down. The company would have to pay the sales staff a 10% commission on sales. So they won't get 18,000 Rand straight, they'll have to get less because they have to pay the sales staff 10% for every sale of each transmitter. Required. With reference to IAS2 inventories, explain how DeFi Limited should account for the 20 transmitters on hand at year end. Right. So if you go now and you talk about conceptual framework, whether these transmitters are an asset, you're going to get 0. The question says with reference to IAS2. So I need to go to IAS2 and those rules and apply theory from there. So what is the theory here is that we need to recognize inventory at the lower of cost or net realizable value. So according to IAS2, inventory is measured at the lower of cost or net realizable value. Half a mark. Now I don't just leave it there. I have to go and apply my theory. What is the cost and what is the net realizable value? So my cost is 16,000 Rand each. Now I can't write 16,000 Rand on my accounting records because that means I just have one transmitter. I have actually 20 transmitters. So my cost is 16 times by 20. 320,000 is my cost price for my transmitters. So I go and write that down. The cost price of the 20 transmitters amounts to 320. So whatever goes on in your mind, calculation wise, write it down. There's a mark for that. Don't do that in your mind and expect us to know that you did it in your mind. We are not mind readers. Okay, so you got the cost. Net realizable value. What's the net realizable value? It's your selling price less your selling costs. Net realizable value is if you sold it, what would you get for it? So 18,000, but less 10%. So the easy way is just to take 18,000 times by 90%. So we will receive 16,200 after paying the sales staff their commission for each router. So that's times by 20. So our net realizable value is 324,000. We could have done the old guy's method and say 18,000 times by 10%, take that off the 18,000 and you get 16,200. So net realizable value is 18,000 times by 90% times by 20, 324. So if inventory is measured at the lower of cost or net realizable value, which one is lower? It's your cost. Therefore, no adjustment is necessary to the inventory valuation of 320 as the net realizable value is greater than the cost. The 324 is greater than the 320. So you don't need to adjust the cost price. You don't need to do a write down. If it was lower, let's say it was 300,000, then you'd need to adjust the lower would be the net realizable value. So you'll adjust it down from 320 to 300. All right. If you just told me this and you did these calculations in your head and you said, therefore, no adjustment necessary, you'll get 1 out of 2,5. You got 40%, you failed that question. Show your workings. Don't expect us to know what's going on in your mind. Yes, we know all the answers, but we want to see if you know the answers. So theory questions, just keep it simple into three parts. Number one is what's the issue and what's the theory relating to that issue. Apply that theory to the question with calculations, as much information as you can give based on what you are given, and conclude. Theory, issue, apply, conclude. Okay, next discussion question. Your friend Kathy Chen has decided to import swimming costumes from New Zealand. The December summer holidays are fast approaching and the demand for these swimming costumes increases greatly. In the contract, the supplier stated that the contract will follow FOB shipping point. The swimming costumes are loaded onto the cargo ship in New Zealand on the 1st of November and arrive at the Durban harbour on the 15th of November. Explain the term FOB shipping point. Be sure to explain what FOB stands for and what FOB shipping means. Okay, so FOB stands for free on board, FOB, and shipping point means that you're going to recognize the goods as an asset on the moment the goods are loaded into the transport. So don't just say when the goods are loaded. What do you mean when they loaded in Durban Harbour or when they loaded in New Zealand? No, when it's loaded onto the transport, so in the cargo ship. But if you just say when FOB shipping means that the purchaser recognizes when the goods are loaded. Recognizes what? Recognize the goods as assets, meaning they debit the assets. And when they load it onto the ship or transport. If you just said it short form, if you got a lenient marker, they might mark it right. If you got a strict marker, it's wrong. And the seller derecognizes the goods on the same date, so it's no longer an asset to them. Let's look at your TUTs. In your TUTs, question 6.4c, Zambian zebras. Look at this question. If you didn't get full marks for this question, it means you didn't do your TUTs, you didn't study. So you are rewarded for doing your TUTs because this question is based on your TUT. Okay, now remember also apply to the question. So which date will Kathy recognize? When it's loaded on the 1st of November. Therefore, Kathy will recognize the swimming costumes as inventory. Don't just say she'll recognize it. She'll recognize it as inventory, meaning she'll debit inventory on the 1st of November, since that's the moment the goods are loaded on the transport. Okay, so always state your theory and apply the theory and then conclude. Easy 2 marks. Okay, Ripple Limited sells a bundle made up of a surfboard, a swimming costume, and a bottle of sunscreen for 1.5. Okay, so if you buy these three together, you pay 1.5. The following standalone prices for each product. If you buy them separately, you have to pay 1.4 for the surfboard, 500 for the costume, and sunscreen for 100 Rand. So if you buy them separately, If you buy all three separately, it will cost you 2,000 Rand for all three. But if you buy them as a bundle, you pay 1,500. When selling as a bundle, what is the transaction price of the swimming costume? Okay, so we know what we base it on standalone selling prices. So what is the question? The question is saying that from this 1,500, how much of this 1,500 relates to the swimming costume? So based on standalone price, you take your 500, divide, which is the total of these four standalone prices, times by 1,500, 375. So the transaction price of the swimming costume in the bundle is 375. Okay, simple. So let's say if you sell a swimming costume and you give it, let's say a customer buys a bundle and you're going to give them the surfboard later and you can give them sunscreen later, but you give them the swimming costume now, you can debit revenue with 375. I mean, sorry, credit revenue with 375. You're not going to credit with 500 because 375 is the transaction price of the swimming costume in the bundle. Right, and part B is the exact same concept. To determine the transaction price for contracts in which a customer promises consideration in the form other than cash. So you provide them with a good or service and they don't pay you cash, they're going to give you something else. Maybe they give you a vehicle, or they give you a machine, they give you something else. The entity shall measure the non-cash considered at cost price. But we know that's not true. It's straight theory, they'll measure it at fair value. So that's false. If each party to the contract has the unilateral enforceable right to terminate a wholly unperformed contract without compensation. What are they saying here? If the party unilateral can cancel a contract, terminate a contract, meaning unilateral mean without the agreement of the other party, they can just cancel it without compensation, without doing their part. Let's look at our theory. There's a chair. A contract does not exist if each party to the contract has a unilateral enforceable right to terminate without compensation. So what was it? What was the key? A contract does not exist. Okay, so a contract still exists? No. A partial contract exists? No. An enforceable contract exists? No. A full contract exists until transaction date? No. The answer is none of the options. A contract does not exist. So can you see that a lot of the time you may think, okay, none of the options is never the answer. It can be the answer. And it was the answer for question 5. So don't just, if you take a chance and say, or if you feel the answer is none of the options, you must be confident. Don't say it can't be that. Maybe I made a mistake. It can be the answer. It's possible. Which one of the following statements is correct? Inventory is an asset which the business buys to resell after using the asset. No, they just to resell, not after using the asset. All income is revenue and all revenue is income. Well, we know that revenue is income, right? So that's true. But is all income revenue income? No. Revenue is some contracts with customers for goods and services. What about rental income or commission income or other types of income, dividend income. That's not revenue. Okay, so this is also false. The statement of cash flows is not an official financial statement according to IFRS. It is. You got your statement of financial position, statement of comprehensive income, statement of changes in equity, statement of cash flows, and notes to the financial statements. That's not true. The statement of cash flows may only be prepared according to one method, that is a direct method. False. It can also be prepared with the indirect method. So all the statements are incorrect. That was the answer. Okay, here in this question, Cardano Limited purchased 1,000 routers. Each router costs 500 with import duties of 10%. Okay, so we know we have to add that to our costs. So 1,000, so 500 times by 1,1. We're adding the 10%, 550. Cardano Limited hired workers, total cost of 16,000. So what's the cost per router? Divided by 1,000 routers is 16 Rand. So you take your 16, add it to your 550. All costs were paid for in cash. The business intends to resell the routers. A further 1,000 was spent on advertising. That's a selling cost. That doesn't add to the cost of the inventory. It's not necessary to bring it to the condition and location for its sale. Right. So our answer will be the 550 plus the 16, which gives you 566. Cost per router. Okay, that's it for today. All right, I will be taking some questions now. Okay, I did get a direct message saying, please, can you go over question 6? Okay, but guys, if you are happy, you may leave now. It's 9:25, but I'm just going to go over question 6 quickly. Right? Blockchain Limited sells 1,000 hard drives to NFT for 3,000 each. NFT has a right to return the hard drives for full refund for any reason within 30 days of purchase. The cost of each hard drive is 1.5. Blockchain Limited estimate based on the expected value method that 7% of sales of the hard drives will be returned. So 7%, right? And it's probable that the returns will not be higher than 7%. On the date of the sale, the amount of the return asset recognized will be what? So what's our cost? It's 1,500, right? We're selling 1,000 hard drives. So times by 1,000. So that's a total cost. How much do we expect that's going to be returned? 7%. So times by, you can say times by 7 over 100, or I like to say times by 0.07. So 105,000. Okay, you even had a question, you even had an example like this in your notes. Here's it. An entity sold 500 vests and the customer will probably return 100 vests. So what's the 100 vests? 100 vests times by 7 Rand cost. So you got a right of return assets, 700 Rand. So if you went through your notes, did your examples, this would have been a very easy question for you. It is an easy question. Will there be any MCQ in test 3? There could be. Okay, guys, thank you very much, everybody. Don't forget that you're writing next week, Wednesday. Don't forget that your concept test will be open as well from today till next week, Monday. I wish you the best of luck. And I hope that um, you are going to see the importance of doing your tuts and improve your typing skills and improve your discussion type question answering skills. Thank you very much, everybody. Have a lovely day.